Excuse me. Your curtain. Please allow me to help.
Help? From you?
I mean to offend. I just thought you should know that
That I should know what? That some privileged white guy thinks his opinion matters? I'm not some damsel in distress waiting for you to ride in on your high horse. The apple, my dear, it's a magic wishing apple. A wishing apple? You offer it to me freely.
Oh, what has she done to you? Fear not. First love's kiss can break any curse.
And can go through to know that what they're working on is something that has reached a generation of people.
Oh my God.
Weird.
So Snow White slept and waited for her prince to come, but he never did. Because a woman shouldn't have to depend on a man. Snow White was brought back to life by a lady doctor.
And she lived happily ever after?
Well, she couldn't indulge in strenuous activities like handball, but otherwise, she was fine.
That's nice.
I'll quickly mention this. The son of Snow White producer Mark Platt, Jonah Platt is the son's name. He is speaking out publicly against Rachel Zegler and blaming her for the film's catastrophic failure at the box office.
Fix a promo tweet with a political statement. As a result, Mark Platt flew to New York to speak with her in person.
Has been absolutely horrifying. Like, I literally found myself feeling bad for them at times, that just shows you how terrible this has been. It is financially crumbling, financially failing. The reviews are genuinely horrible, and new controversies surrounding the production, surrounding the actresses in the film are literally popping up every single day. They cannot outrun the curse.
Still have the most talented people in the world working with the best writers, with a good sense of narrative and the cultural moment. Even if everything worked perfectly, it would have been almost impossible for this movie to succeed.
Rachel Zegler's rise in Hollywood was meteoric. She went from a relatively unknown high school performer to a breakout star, handpicked by Steven Spielberg to headline his remake of West Side Story. With a Golden Globe nomination under her belt and Disney backing her as the next Snow White, it seemed like the entertainment industry had found its next leading lady. But what followed was a whirlwind of controversy, backlash, and a remarkable fall from grace, so dramatic that even The Simpsons couldn't resist turning it into satire. What happened to Rachel Zegler, and how did her promising career spiral into one of the most spectacular backlashes we've seen in years? The turning point came when Disney announced their live-action remake of Snow White, casting Zegler, of Colombian and Polish descent, in the role of a princess traditionally portrayed with skin as white as snow. While Disney has a history of diversifying their characters in remakes,
where we can entertain responsibly, obviously we try to do that. We try to have a positive impact on the world. But the first thing we need to do is entertain.
This casting choice ignited widespread debate. But the real spark wasn't the casting, it was Zegler herself. In a series of interviews leading up to the film's promotional push, Zegler took a sharply critical stance toward the 1937 animated classic. She dismissed the original love story as weird and claimed the prince was a guy who literally stalks her. Instead, Zegler explained that her version of Snow White wouldn't be dreaming about love or a prince, but rather about becoming a leader, a strong independent woman. In her words, for Disney, this was supposed to be a modern, feminist reimagining of a timeless fairy tale. But for fans, Zegler's comments came off as tone-deaf and disrespectful toward the original. Rather than celebrating the opportunity to bring a beloved character to a new generation, her statements felt like an attack on the very film she was hired to represent. It wasn't just about being progressive. It was about appearing to reject the charm, innocence, and emotional heart that made Snow White a classic. In the first place, as these interviews circulated online, the backlash was swift. Fans and critics alike questioned why Zegler seemed to resent the story she was leading. Memes started surfacing mocking the girlboss version of Snow White. TikTok and YouTube creators dissected her interviews, with many accusing her of lacking humility and gratitude for the role. Hashtags like Not My Snow White and Girlboss Snow White trended, amplifying the controversy. Even supporters of more inclusive casting found themselves cringing at Zegler's approach to the press tour, describing it as needlessly combative and alienating.
I'm a narcissist. The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so.
Okay.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird.
and then it became like, I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part. A lot of people will assume it's a love story just because like we cast a guy in the movie, Andrew Burnap. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
I say, if I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is.
Then came the bombshell. The Simpsons, famous for its sharp social commentary, released a parody titled SnowWoke, the Reimagining. The fictional in-universe film featured a character clearly modeled after Zegler, portrayed as a self-obsessed, virtue-signaling social justice warrior. In the parody, she bans princes, delivers lectures to villagers about progressivism, and watches her own film flop before having a meltdown on Krusty the Clown's show. The satire was brutal, and the message was clear. Even mainstream media was turning on her. At this point, Zegler had already become somewhat of a cultural punchline. But what truly sealed the public's disinterest in the film was the box office performance. After all the promotional drama, Snow White absolutely tanked. In its opening weekend, it made a paltry $2 million, a disaster by Disney standards. In contrast, the Minecraft movie made over $60 million during the same weekend, a film without nearly the same legacy or marketing push. Videos circulated online of completely empty theaters during Snow White screenings, further cementing the idea that the public had rejected both the film and its message. To make matters worse, even the industry began to distance itself from Zegler. Reports emerged that Disney executives were frustrated by her behavior during the press tour. They allegedly asked her to tone down her rhetoric and pull back on politically charged statements, especially when she posted Free Palestine on social media just as she was being promoted as the face of a global Disney franchise. Her co-star Gal Gadot, who is Israeli, was reportedly blindsided by the post. Producers even flew to meet Zegler in person, urging her to delete the post due to the sensitive nature of Disney's global market and Gadot's background. Zegler reportedly refused, doubling down instead. That move, while principled to some, was viewed by many in the industry as another example of her being unmanageable during a high-stakes marketing campaign. By this point, Zegler had gone radio silent. She stopped posting on social media and withdrew from interviews. Disney, meanwhile, seemed to stop promoting her. She was left out of key marketing material, and rumors began circulating that the studio had pulled future media appearances. What was supposed to be her star-making role turned into a cautionary tale about public relations gone horribly wrong. Online discourse surrounding Zegler only intensified. An AI-generated OnlyFans account featuring a fake version of her face went viral, and thousands believed it was real. The fact that people were so willing to believe such a scandalous story reflected how deeply the public's perception of her had changed. She wasn't seen as a respected Disney star anymore, but as a controversial figure, one who had invited scorn with every misstep. Adding fuel to the fire was the way the film handled the Seven Dwarfs. In an attempt to avoid perpetuating stereotypes, Disney replaced the dwarfs with a group of diverse magical creatures of varying races and genders. This decision was publicly criticized by Game of Thrones star Peter Dinklage, who called it patronizing and counterproductive. In trying to please everyone, Disney had managed to upset everyone. Traditional fans were frustrated by the changes, and marginalized communities felt the gestures were shallow and performative. The final product felt confused, as if it had lost sight of the story it was trying to tell. Critics didn't hold back either. The film's extra musical numbers were described as awkward and poorly executed. Reviewers said the film lacked the magic, charm, and emotional resonance of the original. Instead of inspiring audiences, it left them cold, another case of ideology taking precedence over storytelling. On IMDb, the film's rating plummeted to as low as 1.6 out of 10 at one point, with thousands of one-star reviews calling it a joyless remake, a woke train wreck, and the worst thing Disney has ever made. Behind the scenes, more cracks started to appear. Industry insiders claimed Spielberg, once a strong supporter of Zegler, had quietly distanced himself from her. Future casting announcements began to omit her name, even for projects she was previously attached to. A very public breakup with her Hunger Games co-star Josh Andres Rivera only added to the cloud hanging over her career. From a PR perspective, Zegler was toxic. She had burned bridges with audiences, with studios, and even with her co-stars. What makes this situation particularly fascinating is how preventable it all seemed. Rachel Zegler had talent, youth, beauty, and industry backing. She was given one of the most iconic roles in cinematic history, but instead of using the platform to celebrate the character and connect with fans, she chose to criticize the source material, push a political narrative, and double down in the face of backlash. While some praised her for her authenticity and willingness to speak her mind, most saw her behavior as arrogant, dismissive, and out of touch with the core Disney audience. Now, with The Simpsons parody serving as a cultural obituary for this version of Snow White, it's hard not to look at Rachel Zegler's career as a case study in how not to manage fame. She went from being Disney's next big star to becoming a meme, a target, and a warning for future actors. When you're given a platform, don't use it to alienate the very people you need to win over. It's not about being silent or apolitical, but there's a way to be thoughtful, strategic, and respectful, especially when you're representing a billion-dollar brand. Still, all is not lost. Hollywood has a short memory, and redemption arcs are always possible. If Zegler plays her cards right, perhaps with a strong performance in a future film, a more nuanced public persona, or even just some time away from the spotlight, she could rebuild her image. But for now, the Snow White saga will remain one of the most bizarre cautionary tales in recent Hollywood history, where a young starlet tried to rewrite a fairy tale, only to become a tragic figure in one herself.